New Horizons, Part 2, by Gridinad. It was an exciting time to be a glorified space probe. Eli was positively charged when he heard the transmissions from the Emerald and Sapphire world, the one he'd been contacted to survey. Its atmosphere had been why the Plutonian Guild of Astronomers had forked over the large sum to hire a guild mine and survey operator, when they had run the data on the lensing from the local star. The Vesuvian Guild, who currently held his employment voucher and backup copies, keenly expressed the importance of fulfilling this contract to the letter. If he did perchance find a xeno-sapient species, there could be a big paycheck in store for the whole guild, so don't fuck up. Well, that's what their implied meaning was. He knew he'd have to fulfill the contract and organize a contact scenario that didn't result in rocks being hurled from solar system to solar system over some easily avoidable insult like religion or something. So he settled in for a bit of a ponder, an internal avatar, modeled after his old biological body, slumping and scratching his chin in a virtual room he'd created. The room, he thought of it as his study, was something the psychologist consulting for the digitization project in the late 22nd century had dreamed up to keep the persona's idea of form and sanity. Eli had based it off his old flat from when he was 30, a small room with a low, wide bookshelf, a corner desk, and a bed opposite of that. His two Canadarm-12 were also a part of that effort to keep his consciousness from rejecting the craft as his body and slow any possible mental decay. It took him 2 full server cycles to come up with a plan. He'd fulfill his contract, wait around the large gas giant in the system for locals to do their first being on a new planet spiel or dangle a few radio transmissions in a few interesting places. Then maybe arrange a meeting near the giant and get an agreement to set up a beacon to Earth. After that, maybe see if he could get a few interesting tidbits of science and data from them. With that rough plan outline, he performed the required long-range tests and scans. He also redesigned his usual build and burn planetary scouts to something a little less noticeable. Normally, he'd build them quickly and cheaply in his bay from some local iron-heavy asteroids, resembling an old 20-sided die with one engine on the bottom. But with a civilization on the designed planet, he'd have to be a bit more careful. The new scout craft was a small glider, made primarily from a silica tungsten composite that would slowly glide down through the atmosphere, take its data, and then crash into a handy volcano that was currently active. The scout would, at a glance to another human, remind them of stealth bombers scaled down, colored green and white, with a goofy face he'd stenciled on for a laugh. After the redesign, and a booster stage to get the scout going, he sent it off to the planet, second from its star. All he had to do now was wait for the glider to break atmosphere, determine the composition of the atmosphere, and take some photos of interesting bits of ground, and then package all that up with the stellar data and send it to the Astronomers Guild. As he waited, he started to sort through the transmissions from the planet. First, he determined how to even read the transmissions, which luckily turned out to be binary, and images came through in a rough 480 resolution, but only black and white. As Eli sifted through the growing gigabytes of data, he mused to himself, his avatar hunched over a computer, scrolling past pages of search results. Through some cosmic chance, the first video converted was a documentary about the race themselves. Oh wow, they're 4-foot lemurs with no tails and look like the old Planet of the Apes actors. With bioluminescent eyes, how the hell did that work? And they call themselves the Glint. Make female with guys being bigger and females being smarter on average. Next, he found their version of a news broadcast, which from a telltale string of data at the beginning, he could see made the majority of what he was getting. The first was a female with her glowing orange eyes heavily accented by purple highlights on her face, reading from black sheet, commenting on how the nation's economies were doing. Looks like they're divided into 3 separate nation-states that are in a Cold War. The Pan-Oceanic Islands, the United Plateaus of Garl, and the Yantia Coalition. Not sure how that happened. No signs of nukes or radiation from a previous war. He muttered from his avatar, skipping between different recordings. Ooh, Looks like they're in the middle of a space race. Looks like the POI got the first satellite, UPG claimed the first glint in space and on the moon. Looks like the Antia is gearing up to go to the fifth planet, the Mars look-alike. What did they call it? Kalina? They really need the internet. That'd make this whole data accumulation easier. Oh hey, if they actually go to Kalina, I bet they'll set up a receiver for future missions. I could probably beam a transmission there, and chances are the ones there will be the more adventurous of the bunch and hopefully take the bait. Perfect. Time to send a survey back and write a message to the guild about a contract situation. He drafted a document detailing his plan of action and beamed it back to the guild with some of the shows he'd recorded. He settled in the ring of the gas giant, called Jakarta, and waited for his opportunity to arise.